they cannot relate to my lifestyle in any way at all, but they're fascinated by it. And so they're coming out our retreats in Idaho. You forget that, we're such a small part of the population that my days are not like most people's days. And I think they are interested in that. I think it's kind of a flashback to what it used to be like.
Welcome to It's Worth Mentioning, a podcast about local history. I'm your host, Rett Nelson. On March 20th, 6 individuals will be inducted into the Eastern Idaho Agricultural Hall of Fame. It will be held at the Shoshone-Bannock Event Center in Fort Hall. One of the inductees is Jeff and Cindy Siddoway of Terreton. They are 4th-generation sheep ranchers, and they also have an elk bison operation, Mountain Juniper Ranch. I was able to speak with Cindy about their ranching operation, about this induction, but we also got into the history of their families a little bit. Cindy and Jeff's families have been intermixed through the years, and so it was they are almost destined to become a couple and have a life together. But they have a strong background in politics in their family history, and both of them have been in politics as well. Jeff was a state legislator from 96 to 2012, and then Cindy has served with a prominent sheep association for decades and is still involved in that, and became the first female president of that association. So we talk about that. We talk about the immigration issue. Many ranchers utilize migrants to do work on their ranches, and so the Siddaways do as well. They have migrants from Peru come and help them every year, and so they're involved in processing H-2A visa applications. And so Cindy talked a little bit about how the crackdown on illegal immigration has impacted their workforce. And then we get into, other aspects of family life and agriculture and history related to sheep ranching. All of that is coming up in my conversation with Cindy Siddoway. I really think you're going to like it. Jeff and Cindy are among the newest inductees to the Eastern Idaho Agriculture Hall of Fame. They are one of 5 or 6 couples who are going to be inducted. Cindy, thank you for joining us through Zoom today.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, we're the only couple. The others are individual. So That's the distinction. Yeah. So we actually are the couple. So they recognized us both. Yes.
Gotcha. What does it mean to you guys to be selected to be on the Ag Hall of Fame? Is that a big deal, first of all?
It is a big deal. It is a big deal because it's, our peers. It's production agriculture, which we're both heavily involved in and have been for multiple generations. Both my family and his family are sheep people. So it's great to be recognized. And when I was looking back at the recipients, I knew that Jeff's father, Bill, had received the distinction in 1975, and we were lambing. This is our lambing time. So we are so busy from mid-February till mid-April. Shed lamb, thousands and thousands of ewes and lambs going through those sheds. It's really, really labor intensive. We were living at the Egan place at that time, newly married, and it was time for Jeff's dad to get ready to go to that award ceremony. And Jeff's mother called me and said, "You've got to go get Bill and get him. And it's time that we go." So I found him down in the lower sheds and dressed in his coveralls. He was numbering sheep, numbering the lambs. And I said, "Bill, Grandma says you've got to get ready. You've got to go to that meeting." He says, "I can't. I just can't go. I'm not done with my work." And I said, "Oh, she's going to be so mad." And he said, "I can't help it." And by then it was, 5:30, 6 o'clock almost, I think. And he was still down there numbering those lambs. And so I had to go back and call Grandma and said, "He's not going with you." And so she wasn't very happy about it. And So she got his brother James, who had been a recipient before, to go with her that night. But I was reviewing the names and I saw some of my ancestors from years ago, the Laird family, that had been recipients. And, it's just notable people. So it is such an honor to be included with these ag leaders from Eastern Idaho.
Yeah. I remember Jeff telling me that his dad was inducted. We have now 2 generations of the family
Yes,
in this Hall of Fame. That's pretty cool.
it is. Yeah.
As we mentioned, you guys are 4th generation sheep ranchers, or rather Jeff is, and then you married into it. And I'm excited to get into the whole history of the ranch with you, but I wanted to spend a few minutes, first of all, because the last time I spoke to Jeff, he emphasized at the very end of our conversation that he could not do this ranch without you, that you are a critical part of this operation. And so I was kind of curious how you guys divide up the responsibilities among yourselves.
Right. So Jeff's the big picture. He's the idea man. He sees the big picture. I'm detail. I do all the detail. I get the foreign workers here. I help with the H-2A workers and the visas, and I do all the bookkeeping. And first, I did all the cooking. I hauled water before I was ever married. So I think he had me on a trial basis, and he allowed me to do everything on the ranch. I said no to shearing the dead sheep for the wool because we want to get the wool off the dead sheep. I said no to that. I didn't want to drive the semis and I wouldn't shoe the horses, but I was open to about everything else. So, and it's part of my family. My great grandfather had a large sheep ranch. Um, our families kind of worked together several generations ago. So my family came up in the late 1880s or mid 1880s and started raising sheep coming up from Utah. So I have good memories of raising bum lambs, going to family reunions. It When I was looking for a husband, had 3 priorities. He had to know how to ride a horse because I love to ride horses. He had to have sheep, and he had to have a suit that he could wear to church with me. So those were the 3 things, and he really met the criteria early on. So we have a lot in common because our ancestors were in the same hometown, Teton City. I grew up 2 blocks from his grandparents. My best friend was his cousin. So my mother spent a lot of time with his grandparents, helping at their place, helping with their children, and fishing with his granddad. So we had so many similar values and interest that, it was a good fit for both of us, I think.
You mentioned that you're in the middle of lambing season right
Yes.
now. So we're even doubly grateful that you take time to join us today because this is a busy time of year. But tell us about lambing season. A lot of people are not familiar with running a sheep ranch. What all is involved with that?
Sure. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can range lamb, which, where you put the bucks in the fall, and then you lamb in the spring. And if you range lamb, you just go out and they just lamb on their own. And it's usually a little later in the spring when the weather's better. Or you can shed lamb, which is more labor intensive. You can start earlier. We bring ours in. I think we start February 20th. Usually the first lambs are born. And it takes us about 2 months to get through all of them. But you have to have, we have 4 different lambing sheds. We have a day drop, we call it, where the sheep are in the daytime and we feed them in there. And then we have a granny wagon and a herder that's on that granny wagon that picks up the lambs as they drop in this day drop. That's what we call it, a drop. And then they'll bring them into the sheds. At night, we put them in the night drop and we have overhead lights and we have a crew that works all night long. We have 2 night men and then they work the night shift and bring them in through the night. So it's bringing them in, treating them, suckling them, making sure the ewes have enough milk. And if they don't, you do some swapping around. A ewe may have triplets, may have twins, may not have enough milk. So you have to track that. You have shed men that are looking at that all the time and putting the lambs where the milk is. And then it's the numbering process and making sure that you number the lambs to match the ewes. Once you get to 1,000 ewes, then you switch colors and start numbering again. So we make up different herds or bands of sheep, about 1,000 head of ewes, and about 1,600 lambs in each herd. And then as the weather improves and the range increases, you get some grass, you start to turn them out on the range. And that's what we've been doing forever. It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Process really hasn't changed that much in all those years.
And-
But like, I want to tell you how important our herders are, though, our men.
Okay.
I was out there with them day before yesterday, sat with them at lunch. Some of these men have worked with us for 30 years, and they leave their country in Peru. They come up, they can stay 2.5 to 3 years, and they go back for 90 days or longer, and then they can back up to work for us. We couldn't do any of this without those workers. We just couldn't. And we really appreciate our men. We pray for our men and for their families because they give up a lot to come here. But we really appreciate it. And we hope that in some way we can help them and their families in return.
I'm glad you brought up the workers because you mentioned you kind of handle the H-2A visas and so
Yes.
forth.
Yeah.
With all of the talk of immigration, that's something that probably impacts you guys. And I want to come back to that. But since we're talking about the sheep, I want to stay there for just a minute. So these sheep, you raise them and then you sell the wool, right?
Yeah.
And then are they also raised for the meat as well?
Primarily for the meat.
Okay.
Years ago, wool was more significant in the income. Some years it's not enough to pay for the shearing. It costs us probably $45,000 to shear the sheep every year. And then we have tagging costs. You tag in the winter months, meaning you shear off around their eyes and around the back and get them prepared for lambing. And so it takes quite a bit, and you have to do it. You don't that wool, you can't leave that wool on. It becomes really cumbersome. And it's such a great product, but we're small players in the world market. The US is very small players. We have kind of a niche because our wool goes to Shanico, which works a lot with the designers and does the Olympic wear. Yeah, we just saw with the Winter Olympics.
Oh, really?
Lights there were made from wool from Shanico.
Oh,
So that's kind of a niche for us, which is helpful. But primarily the income is from the lamb, from the meat.
So when you say the Olympics, like they make the coats that the Olympians wear?
Cloaks, the sweaters, the gloves, the caps. Yes, it's Ralph Lauren does the designing, but it's Shanico.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
We were just at a sheep meeting prior to the Olympics, and they had some of the sweaters there that they were displaying and auctioning off to some of the sheep people.
on the wool, how many pounds, or I don't know what the measurement is. How much wool is sold every year?
It's pounds. Well, we're down a little in inventory, so we only have about 9,000 ewes right now. But we've had up to 15,000 ewes. One year when Jeff and I were lambing, we had 30,000 sheep at the ranch at the end of lambing because we had 15,000 ewes plus all the lambs. At that time, and when you get about 12,000, it's over 100,000 pounds of wool. Right now, we're probably closer to about 75,000 to 80,000 pounds of wool.
Wow. So how far will a pound of wool go? I mean,
Well, that's raw wool, so it has to be processed and taken out. Ours is we're range sheep operators, so we'll get things mixed in with it. So by the time they get it all cleaned, I don't know how much. Hopefully, it would yield over 50% of clean wool. A little over, I think. Yeah, probably 55. You hope for that. Now, in other circumstances, on other ranches, it might be a little cleaner, but we're out here by these sand dunes in the fall and in the spring, and we're just out on the range, so we can pick up some dirt, and dust, and a little sagebrush along the way.
Yeah. And then you said primarily the sheep are raised for their meat. So every
Yes,
year when
ours.
you,
Yeah. It kind of depends on the breed you want. If you want a wool breed, you'll go Rambouillet. If you want a meat breed, you'll go more Columbia. Well, ours are Columbia ewes. And so ours is a dual purpose. It's both meat and wool, but our ewes are big, really big. So we focus more on the meat side with the bigger carcass on
I
our
see.
lambs.
I see.
So
So
yeah, at
who
different parts of the US will focus on different things. There's a lot of Rambouillet wool breeders up in Montana. Texas has quite a few Rambouillets. So kind of depends on what you're looking for. And there's hairless sheep too. If you don't want to mess with the wool, there's hairless sheep.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
On the meat, who's like your biggest client there? Who are you selling the meat to primarily?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we did our own branded product, Grand Teton Meat, and we were selling our own. And it was, I thought, really successful. We just didn't have enough manpower to do it all because we tend to use family for just about everything. And you got to take care of the sheep first. If you got to make deliveries, it was kind of hard to meet all the demand for it. So we kind of tapered that off. I still think it's something that would be beneficial in the future. But this fall, we didn't retain lambs to do on our own marketing. We sold them, and they go to Harper Livestock bought them this year, and then they'll sell them to different companies. So we're not the final seller on that. Yeah, they'll put them out different places, but there's only a couple of major lamb buyers in the U.S. And so it's very, very concentrated. Not much competition out there for them. So it's far more so than the cattle industry.
I see.
So there's feeders, you can sell them to feeders, or you can sell them directly to a packer.
So you said you had about 9,000 head of sheep?
Yes.
About
Ewes.
ewes.
Ewes, yeah, and a couple of hundred. Usually we'll get about 300 rams. But right now we're probably only about 200, 250 right now.
And that's spread out across, I was told, 15,000 acres, but that includes private, state, and federal land.
No, it's 15,000 are private. It's about 450 if you count state leases, BLM, and Forest Service. So about 450,000 acres. Yeah, we span from the deserts of Mud Lake to the Idaho-Wyoming border. In fact, 2 of our herds we unload in Wyoming, and then they feed back into Idaho. So we were in the forest before there was a Forest Service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of acreage. So yeah. And then we have the elk ranch that, has additional private land that we run our elk and bison on.
Yes. In fact, I was just going to get into that. Is you also raise the elk and the bison. How long has that operation been in existence?
Jeff and I diversified in 2001. So yeah, we've been doing it about 26 years. And we just did it because there's so many lean years with sheep. I mean, you can work all year and really not make any money. And we thought, well, let's try something that maybe we can set the price and not always be price takers. So we had the property, we had the background in livestock, and we had the interest. So we started buying elk and bison, and it does help. It really does help. We ran both together. I had 2 different businesses, but they pretty much tied together. A few years ago, we split so that the elk and the sheep are separate businesses, and we keep the land separate now too, as far as how it was deeded out. So, but we still use, I still use my son who works both places. I work both places. Jeff does. We share in the duties and the responsibilities of both businesses.
How in the world do you like working with elk and bison? I mean, these are wild animals. How do you work with them? How do you how do you get them where you need to have them so that you can butcher them for the meat or whatever.
Well, it's sometimes it's we had like a rodeo, I call it, the other day because we had to we didn't have to, but we decided to sell some bison because we had way too many. And it was a regular rodeo. They were breaking through the fences. It was scary. It really is. I think this is a dangerous profession. So the bison are a little more tricky than the elk. We've learned some lessons through the years on how to do the elk. So we um, get them. They run free on that 12,000 acres, but we condense them down and we trick them into coming in into smaller areas and then into alleys and slowly move them through. You don't wanna rush them. They can die. They're so wild that they can die. It's called capture myopathy, just from the stress of working them. So you go slow. You just work them down so you can get them in individual compartments, and we're required every year to do a physical inventory on all of our elk, and so we do have to manage that and keep really good numbers. Everything is tagged. I have lots of spreadsheets through the years to track all the numbers. We have electronic tags in all our cabs, which we do in December. We'll tag all those. But it's a matter of keeping track of all of it. And it's hard sometimes out there because we've got a couple of big bull elk on the mountain that still haven't ever come down this winter. We know they're out there, but we kept sight of them occasionally. But they'll migrate down, but it's such an unusual winter that, they're just still up there feeding. So, yeah, it's we've learned lessons. There's a right way to do things and a wrong way. And so we've learned through the years the best way to handle those elk. But it can be dangerous. Yeah, they can jump, they can go after you. Those horns are dangerous. So
Yeah.
you have to be very careful.
You mentioned you guys got into the elk and bison operation because, just to diversify a little bit.
Right.
It gets lean with the sheep, but why did you choose bison and elk specifically? Why not as opposed to cattle or some other form of livestock?
So we're kind of purist. Uh, Most sheep people through the years have converted to cattle. I mean, gosh, in the 40s, there were over 56 million sheep in the US in the 1940s.
Mhm.
And now we're down to about 5 million. So many have converted. They find better ways to use their land holdings. It takes a lot of property to raise sheep. And so many have converted to cattle. I only had one cow on the ranch, and my father-in-law was really unhappy about it. It got mixed in with our sheep, and the herders gave it to me to raise. It was just a calf, and so I brought it home and raised it on a bottle, and brought shame to the family because I had that cow. So I gave it to one of the neighbors after I had it raised. But yeah, we just always stayed with the sheep, and we saw opportunity with the elk, and we had someone come to us and ask if they could lease some land from us to raise elk. And Jeff has said, it's a big picture, and he said, "Why would I wanna do that? Why wouldn't I wanna do it myself?" So we did start it, and it's worked out great. I do the bookings. My grandson is now starting to help, with some of the bookings and some of the social media stuff, but I talked to a lot of hunters through the years, and, it's been enjoyable. I mean, we've made a lot of they start out as clients and become friends with us because they come back year after year. And on the elk and bison side, we work a lot with families. We see grandfathers and sons and grandsons and granddaughters. They come and they teach their children the skill of hunting and how to take care of the meat. I mean, it's fun to share some of those memories with these people. It really is. We like to focus on that. We have a few corporate groups, but mostly we have families, generations of families that come.
Circling back to you mentioned earlier, we could not do this without the workers. And every year you have workers from Peru that come to
Mhm.
your ranch and help you with the workload. But you handle, as part of that, the H-2A visas.
Mhm.
And I know that it's over the last year or so, immigration has been a topic of conversation in the news. The Trump administration is making big efforts to secure the border and make it so that, you know, we're eliminating illegal immigrants and we're promoting legal migration. And of all the ranchers I've spoken with, they all are, of course, supportive of legal migration. But with the crackdown on illegal immigration, it has thrown a scare into a lot of migrants because they're worried that if they come to this country, they have this perception that there's a threat of deportation, and that affects people who are able to come and help because of that. Have you guys been impacted by that?
We have, and the H2A only work with the sheep. They don't have anything to do with the elk ranch. But the sheep industry is one of the oldest to use the H2A program. So we started in the late 70s, mid to late 70s with H2A workers. That's why we've been able to have them for so long. And there really isn't anyone that ever applies for the position to be a sheep herder. No one ever applies for it. You have an opening job opportunity for any domestic worker, but it's been years and years and years, I think, since anyone's ever applied for it. So ours, we bring them all on the H2A program. It does work for us, but as I said, we started in the 70s, so we're a little unlike the dairy industry because we have kind of a special program that's allows us to bring them in. Well, I use 2 visas a year, one for the winter months, one for the spring and fall and summer. So it is a lifesaver for us. We really would not be in the business without the herders. And the herders we used to use are in the early 70s. And of course, I have the records back to the early 1900s. I keep the archives of the business. So it's interesting through history, the workers that we have had, and a lot just aren't there anymore. They're just not going to apply for this type of job. The workers that liked the solitude and didn't mind living out in the sheep camps. And those people are not available anymore. So I appreciate the Peruvians. We've used Chileans. We even had a herder from Mongolia, but the language was difficult to communicate. But some of these guys, I mean, we have 3 generations of one family. So I picked up their dad in probably 1980. The granddad now, and we have their son and 2 grandsons, and the son and the 2 grandsons from the same family are still working for us.
Wow.
So yeah, but this year we are having trouble. We have 4 herders. The date of need was February 1st. They're still waiting to get here. So there's a slowdown. I don't know, it's Homeland Security, but some of the visas are still not being approved. And so we're really short of help this year. We're very dependent on that. And the process starts months and months before you get them in. But I don't know. We really couldn't herd sheep. No one would want to do it. I mean, I love it for about 3 days when I'm in the mountains in the summer, but after the 3rd day, I'm ready to come home too. So, well, and in the summer, our men are in the roadless area. They're on horseback with pack strings, and they have cook tents. So it's kind of a rugged lifestyle.
I have heard other ranchers talk about, or other ranchers who work with migrants. Some of these migrants become almost like family.
Oh, they are. We have Ariel was here for Christmas with us. I think Adon or Tomas. No, it was Tomas named his daughter after me. And so, yeah, they've become very close. They're almost like family to us.
In your opinion, do you think there needs to be exceptions in the law to make it easier for the H-2A visas to be processed and go through?
Yeah, I especially can see it with the dairy industry because that's year round, and they need, it in the winter. we group our herds together. So we need less men in the winter. So we can have some go home, which they do. We have a cyclical basis. So we have about 5 or 6 go back to Peru in the winter. And then we alternate which ones will go home the next year. But the dairy folks need people there all the time. And so if they could get a program that would be more beneficial maybe to those, because they're not as other, crop growers are more seasonal too. So it's a temporary seasonal workforce that right now is the focus. So I think, yeah, they could work on it. And they've been talking about it for years and years. And in the past, there have been some opportunities to strengthen it. And I think there was, I don't know how many years ago, but we were able to get help one of our herders get a green card, which was very helpful.
Oh,
It's difficult now. We've been working for years on a couple of ours for green cards and have not been successful.
So Cindy, this podcast that we do here, it's kind of a podcast about local history. And so every episode that we do, there's an element of history involved. And you guys are perfect for that because your sheep ranch goes back many, many generations. Jeff's family, he's the 4th generation to run this ranch. But you yourself, you come from a sheep ranch upbringing that dates all the way back to the 1800s, you were saying.
Yep, yep, yeah.
Um,
The Laird sheep, they came up out of Utah. That was my great grandfather,
what was his name?
Edward Laird.
Edward Laird. In what part of Utah?
Mendon, he was,
Okay, in Cache Valley.
yeah. And then he came up with his sons, and they started the E. Laird and Sons Sheep Ranch. They had sheep in Utah, but they were running out of space. They were wintering in Wyoming, and there was a lot of area, but he saw opportunity. So they came up to the Dubois area. It wasn't Dubois then, it was Dry Creek, and started buying land. So they bought some out in the Montague area and some in the Island Park, Henry's Lake, Kilgore out at Camas Creek. And their home ranch was there in Dubois. So he eventually, they had 8 children. 5 daughters and 3 sons, and my grandmother was one of the daughters. And she married and moved to Teton, and the sons stayed out in the Dubois area and raised sheep out there. So my great uncles, and then down through the years, the cousins. They went out of the business. There was a terrible winter in, I'm trying to think, probably 99. Or 89, I think it was, and lost a lot of sheep in that terrible storm. I know everybody in the Mud Lake area went over to help people. They lost cows, they lost sheep, and I think eventually they just sold off. I think the family still has some of the land, hopefully, but yeah, my grandmother spent a lot of her childhood out there and then moved to Teton City, and that's where my other great grandparents were, both sides. And on my dad's side, my great grandfather, John Donaldson, was instrumental in settling in Teton and St. Anthony. In fact, he was elected to the legislature. Well, I guess it was still called the legislature. It was when we were a territory, and they wouldn't seat him because he was LDS. So he yeah, he was instrumental in the Republican Party in Fremont County. He was the first probate judge, the first county commissioner. He worked alongside Jeff's great-grandparents. So, yeah, it was interesting that, yeah, we're all in the same little hometown of Teton.
So your family history even is kind of
Oh, it's kind of strange. Yeah, you need a whiteboard. We have so many double cousins with, their the brothers would marry the sister in one family, and her brother would marry the sister in the same. And anyway, it was back and forth. So, yeah, Jeff and I have a lot of double cousins.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff was raised in St. Anthony, but his dad grew up in Teton.
So I'm always curious about, when you have these multi-generational ranches, the first guy to start it. Your grandfather or was it great grandfather, Edward Laird?
Yeah.
What was his motivation for wanting to go into the sheep business?
Oh, well, it was profitable. It was profitable, and there was a lot of land opportunity. And he wanted his sons to know how to work. He had a great vision, so he was involved in farm ground, and he bought quite a few homes in the Salt Lake area. There's streets in Salt Lake named like Laird Avenue. So he had a lot of connections there, but they were just short of land in Utah, so they came up here to run the sheep and buy more property up here. The same as Jeff's dad. He saw opportunity to buy land, and it just worked out good. There, for because you get two products, you get the lamb and the wool, and there were sheep outfits at the turn of the century here in Idaho that had 100,000 sheep, and so yeah,
This was
opportunity.
my assumption is this was around the time when the federal government was giving people, they wanted to expand west,
Oh
and
yeah.
so people were applying for land claims to be part of that because they got government funds to start the land and to
Yeah.
farm it and to use it, and then after 5 years, the land was given to them if they did their part.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
and so
Yeah.
that was probably your grandfather's part of moving out west
Yeah,
and
I'm
coming in.
sure it was. Yeah. Well, and then they came, to Utah. Um, my one grandfather was on the Willie Handcart Company, and the other one was on the Martin. So, yeah, I mean, they saw opportunity in raising her family and moving to Utah, and went through a lot of trials to get there. And I appreciate that sacrifice. I really do. So, but speaking of the homesteads, though, out here on the Juniper where we run our elk, this Juniper Mountain that's north of Rexburg,
Yeah.
there's some old homesteads there that people came out and thought they could make a living on that. It's difficult, because there's not water. But yeah, there's a lot of those old homesteads around on that mountain.
Yes. And Jeff has some of the original homesteads in his family are still there. And one of them is forget, it's some kind of business today. It's like a haunted attraction.
Oh, yeah, that was, that, flour mill, the old flour mill in Teton, and that was the Briggses are related to the Siddaways, and so, yeah, one of the Briggs ladies married a Siddoway, so that's run by the Briggs family now, but, yeah, it's a haunted deal, but our haunted mill. Our son, JC, lives on some of the oldest property from the 1880s, and it's at a round hog hauler on the Teton River, just north of Newdale. That's probably our oldest piece.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and he lives there. Uh, he loves to fish, and it's right on the river, so that's where he wanted to live. My one daughter, Billie Jean, lives at Victor on the summer range because she likes it up there. And then we're between both the spring and fall, and because we were in Fremont County part of the time too. So we live both in Fremont, the St. Anthony, and then in the Terreton area.
Yes. Okay. Um, Circling back a little bit to your other ancestor, John Donaldson,
Hmm.
said he was in the territorial legislature and was instrumental in the Republican Party,
Yeah.
but he faced a lot of backlash just because he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
There was a period of time in Idaho in those early days when they wouldn't allow Latter-day Saints to vote. There's a lot of anti-Mormon sentiment.
Right.
Did he live during that time then?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. It
Okay.
is really interesting. I was reading one of his letters the other day that a group of them had sent a letter to the church president, Wilford Windrow, and it was on the county. They were going to pick the county seat for Fremont County, and there was a discussion whether it would be in Rexburg or St. Anthony. And some of the members they were so upset that they were going to leave the church if it went to Rexburg instead of St. Anthony. So it was just interesting reading the letter and the ones that signed on it. But yeah, it was kind of controversial. So that was probably, I don't know, 1888, 1889. I assume, in that time frame.
Yes, just a few years before Idaho became a state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did he want to get into politics? Was it because of the religious aspect? He wanted to have rights for his faith, or was it other reasons?
No, he was really well, he was well educated. He graduated from Edinburgh University in Scotland. His family migrated to Massachusetts in, I think, 1814. He was born there, but then he went back and had more education back in Great Britain. And he was an attorney. He was a surveyor. He was just a very well educated man, and he just was instrumental in starting up this area here. As I said, I didn't know him at all, but I just know the stories that have been handed down about him.
Getting into Jeff's side of the family, it was his great grandfather who
Yes.
started the Siddoway
Mhm.
sheep operation, and they originally settled in like the New Dale area, like you were saying. Was it New
Yeah, they
Dale?
did up in Canyon Creek, yeah, and then they came back to Teton. Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
yeah, yeah, and his home is still there in Teton. Beautiful home built in probably 1896. I spent a lot of time there because my best friend was Jeff's cousin, and she lived in that house. So we call it the big house, but it's a beautiful home. A lot of history there. My mother spent a lot of time there because her best friend was Jeff's great aunt. So yeah, we've been connected through generations. But they settled in Teton, very instrumental in the irrigation and the canal system. Jeff's uncle James was on the county commission for a long time. He was on the school board. So yeah, they've always been committed to civic duty. Or
Remind,
it's something that's important, I think.
remind me what Jeff's great grandfather's name was?
James William.
James William. Yeah.
Then Jeff's grandfather was James Clarence, but we called him JC. And he was quite a character.
Yeah.
And he really was. He was I did know him quite well. Uh, my friend Linda and I, his granddaughter, we had sneaked back from her house to my house, and we'd go through the Siddoway home, and usually JC or Clarence would be sitting there asleep, and we'd get one of his Cokes out of the fridge and head to my house. So it was kind of the midway point, but a great family. Yeah, it was good brothers. They knew how to work. Jeff's dad loved the sheep. He loved the sheep, and so um, as do I. So that's the thing that we have most in common. I think that we really appreciate livestock and opportunity to work on the land. Or
Mhm.
as I said before when I talked to you, to take my kids to work every day.
Yes. Um, I believe I'm trying to remember now. I hope you can correct me if I get some of the details wrong here, but Jeff was telling me I believe it was his grandfather who that was around World War One when he was selling wool to the government or the military to make uniforms for the soldiers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know that story?
Oh, yeah. Well, we still do. Yeah, we still do. So I was president of the American Sheep Industry Association, as was Jeff's father. So I seemed like I had more time than Jeff did to do it. So at that time, it was the National Wool Growers, and then they did a name change to American Sheep Industry Association. So when I was president, we still worked very hard with the military, and we do to this day. That the uniforms are made from American wool.
Mm.
And during the war, it was important. The wool was very important at that time too, because they made all the uniforms with it. So yeah, we still have a contract with the military to use American wool.
Wow. But then also skipping ahead a little bit to like World War II, I know you mentioned briefly earlier that there was like a sudden boom in the sheep industry
Mhm.
where sheep were very much in demand, and there was, millions of acres of land was used for sheep ranching in America.
Yep.
Why was it such an in-demand thing at that time?
Well, the wool, they needed the wool and the meat. They were using a lot of the meat. other than a lot, and I think Jeff mentioned this to you, they were doing some canned mutton from Australia that really turned off uh, the soldiers from World War II because it wasn't the best tasting thing. So some have bad memories of that and stayed with them for years and years and years. Now people look at lamb differently than they did then, but I just think the demand was there for both the meat and the wool.
But then today, there seems to be it's a significantly decreased. You said there was once, I don't know how many millions, but the
Yeah,
the amount today is like 5 million.
like 5 million. Yeah, it was 56 million back in the 40s. Well, and it's hurt us on on the domestic side because we have so many imports. So when I was president, we were successful to get a tariff rate quota on Australia and New Zealand, and at that time, that was in the late 1999, 98, 2000 time. W- there was about 30% of the meat coming in. 30% of our lamb was imported, and we thought that was way too much. Right now, it's at 80%. So we can't meet the demand with our domestic supply, but we can't, it's hard to compete with the imports, especially with there's things that are out of our control, like the value of the dollar. If our dollar's strong, they're coming in, and Australia especially. And so we looked at it again. I don't know that we could ever get a tariff rate quota again, but just some way to curve it. I know we need some to meet the demand because there is an increase in demand for lamb. We see it in the fine dining, especially in the cruise ships um, and in the cities, more in the metropolitan areas. There's more of a demand for it, but a lot of opportunity I see. But it is hard to compete with the foreign product. And these are things that, yeah, it doesn't matter how good a producer you are. It's just hard to control certain variables, the labor, the value of the dollar, the
So
number
those
of imports.
are those factors. Is that what has led to the decline in the number of sheep ranchers?
Yes, and predators. So I have some brochures from the Woolgers meetings, National Woolgers meeting in like 1950. The issues are the same: predators, trade, labor, uh, the concentration, of the packers. We go over the same things. The issues really don't change through the years, but the predators take a toll. I remember I gave congressional testimony, I think in 1995, when wolves were being reintroduced.
Mm.
And of course, I was avid that we didn't want the wolves to come in, because I said, in our situation, we could lose hundreds of sheep with one attack. And it did happen. Exactly as I said it would happen, and it did. We were in the mountains. It was probably 2018. We had wolves come in, and it was on Wolf Mountain, where it's not Wolf Mountain. I can't remember now which place, but it was just south of Victor. And they hit the sheep about 1 o'clock in the evening, at night, dark. The herders could hear them, but they didn't know what was going on, so they shot up in the air. They got the sheep to stampede, killed 2 of them outright, and then by the time they were finished, there were 176 dead sheep in that one attack. And that's just what I explained. In these high mountain areas, they can go over a ridge, they can pile up, they can suffocate, and it was horrendous. And and then the concern was the hikers up there and the grizzly bears that would come in to feed on it. So we did fight against that. Finally, we did agree with certain um, containments on the wolves, and we still lose a lot every year. The last fall we lost 17 rams in 2 nights. So that takes a toll. It really does. You put a lot of effort to genetics and trying to get the best product, and then to lose it to predators. And it's not only the wolves, it's the bears, it's coyotes. Coyotes are always with us. So yeah, and the labor issue and the work. It's hard work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that issue with predators is an ongoing challenge.
Yeah.
And there's ebbs and flows with legislation on that, you know.
Oh, there is. Yeah, there is. So, and that's why I've always been in politics. Jeff's been in politics because it's hard to be in agriculture and not be involved because decisions are made that really affect you from public lands grazing to, whatever. You need to be at the table.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've always tried to stay active. One thing my grandfather, Jeff's dad, or my father-in-law, Jeff's father, Bill, used to say we were in the glad business because we were always glad when lambing ended, glad when shearing ended, glad when trailing ended, glad when we'd ship them off the mountain. So we're always glad that something ends and something new is beginning, and then we just can do it again the next year.
I want to talk about Jeff's time in the legislature,
Yeah.
but I do want to talk about, because we've been talking about how both of Jeff's and your family background is so intermixed. And you talked about earlier how you had 3 criteria for a husband when you were looking for one. And one of them, he had to be a sheep rancher, he had to have a suit, and he had to have one other thing. I don't remember what it was, but
Ride a horse.
he had to ride a horse.
He had to ride a horse, yeah.
So how did you two meet, you and Jeff?
As I said, my best friend was his first cousin. So the first time I met Jeff, Linda and I were walking from her house to mine in Teton, and her grandfather's pickup went by us, and it stopped, and I said, "Who's that?" And Linda says, "That's my cousin Jeff." And of course, I knew of Jeff's dad through my mother, but he was probably about 13. He shouldn't have been driving a pickup, but he was. And so I think that's the first time I really got to meet Jeff, when I was about 13. But then when I went to high school in South Fremont, he was there. He was a year ahead of me. And so I knew him through high school. We dated after I graduated, before I started at Ricks College. Jeff was at the University of Idaho. So although we were friends, we didn't date till that summer before I went to college. And then he wrote letters to me every week when he was at the University of Idaho. And then my sophomore year, I transferred to the University of Idaho. So I was up there with him. And then when his dad, we were going to get married that fall anyway, but then when his dad had that heart problem, we just went ahead and got married. And then I finished up at ISU. I finished my education there. But yeah, we dated probably a couple of years before we were married.
And Jeff was 1 semester shy of getting his degree?
Yeah, he would have been his senior year. Yep, his senior year up there. Yeah. And it was a cultural, a little bit of a cultural shock. So I go from 1 year at Ricks College at the University of Idaho. But it was interesting, and I loved being up there. I learned a lot up there. We had a good time.
Does Jeff regret not completing his college education?
Well, I think so, but I don't know that it would made any, a bigger difference in his life. But yeah, I tried to get him. He could finish it. Yeah, he's just like semester short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So close. He was so close. And then
So
he had
close.
this family circumstance where he had to move home, and
Yeah.
which is understandable, but
Yeah.
and he was into the ranching from the get-go, so it's not like
It was. Yeah.
it's not like it would have been a major life change or anything, but
Yeah.
he was so close to getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And his dad went there, and his uncles went there to the University of Idaho. And so, yeah, he was just kind of completing that legacy.
You were president of that association. Remind me of the association's name?
The American Sheep Industry Association.
American
It's our national sheep trade association.
And you were with that association for years and years, but
I still am.
still are?
Yeah, I'm on the legislative committee and on the Sheep Heritage Committee. So, yeah.
But in the 90s, you were president of the association, weren't you?
Yes. Well, yeah, I started out in the mid-90s, secretary, vice president, and then president. Yeah.
And sometimes, it's historic for the fact that you were the first female president.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you mention that to people and they think, well, that's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Has that been significant to you that you were the first female president?
Well, it dates back to 1865. So in some respects, yes. Yeah. And as our or our exec at the time, he said, um, no, it's not a big deal that you're a woman necessarily. It's just,
Right.
that you're in the position to be the president now. And I learned early on when I started going to those meetings, I would sit with some of the who I thought were the seasoned older people there, and I learned so much from them. I was fascinated by the marketing. I was fascinated by the sheep industry as a whole and the political end of it. So I started out working a lot on the Legislative Action Committee, did a lot with and chaired that for a few years. And I learned so much from so many there. So I just it worked well. It was an honor to serve. It was to
Yeah.
serve. And we've had a couple of women. We've had one other from Idaho. We had one from Ohio that served through the years. But yeah, it was a good opportunity because it was something I really cared about.
And then Jeff, he served in the legislature. Um, did he start? He got out in 2012.
He served 12 years. Yes, 12 years.
And so early 2000s, I believe, is when he started.
Yeah. 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 I think 96 maybe when he ran.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, 96 to 2012. Why did Jeff want to run for state office?
Well, we've always had cheap people involved in the Idaho legislature. Our own governor is a sheep man. So Pete Santarusa served for years and years as
Mhm.
Secretary of State. So just all the issues that are important and that civic duty. I mean, his family served. You just you just feel like you have a duty to contribute. And I think we need to focus on that more and more at the time, too, that people realize they have a civic duty to participate. We have this sense of community
Mhm.
and we love our communities, but we're seeing a lot of changes in Idaho. And I appreciate those that are still willing to serve and take part. I served on a school board. I served on the state board of education. I so many different local programs and things, whether it be in government or in your church calling or whatever. It's important that you serve and there's a lot of opportunities. So
Mhm.
he yeah, I think it was good there. He had a knowledge in agriculture, land use. He was instrumental, I think, in helping the schools. And because he cared a lot, we're all products of our Idaho schools. And I think he enjoyed it. He got kind of burned out at the end. Unfortunately, I never did go over with him because we're lambing then, and
Mhm. Yeah.
I had to be home, and then I had a grandson that I was raising that had to get him up to school every day. So I didn't. I only would go over occasionally, but I didn't have the opportunity to spend time over there. So I think that was hard too. Inequity,
Mhm.
more family support over there. So he was always glad to come home on the weekends.
The land use legislation he was involved in, what was that all about?
Oh, just you understand on how permits work and different things with the land use and the endowments, the land that's endowed. And then he worked quite a bit on the tax commission, not the tax commission, but government and tax committee. He did different things there, and I think that was interesting for him to work on. But yeah, those are questions for him
Mhm.
probably. And
Sure.
but, I just, I think it's good to have, well, an ag background because you have business and you have all different factors that go into running the business. So we kinda have that advantage as well too. And all the legislatures can lend their expertise in different areas. So, he took from, what he knew to share with others.
So with this long history of ranching and, serving in public office in your guys' families, um, your children are now the next generation is kind of running the ranch. You have some sons that are that are running it. One of your sons is running the elk and bison operation by himself, right?
Well, no. So we only have one son. I have two daughters and one son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Forgive me. I am getting my facts
Yeah.
mixed up.
So we're still heavily involved in both businesses, heavily involved. But JC, our son, is mainly running the sheep operation. I mean, I'm still doing the bookwork, but I have a granddaughter that graduated in accounting. And so she's starting to do some of the accounting for the sheep company. And so I'm handing some of that off to her, and I'm so excited she'll do that. I'm still doing all the books for the elk ranch, but I have a grandson that's helping on the elk ranch now. So he's the sixth generation. And then my granddaughter, of course, is six, that's starting to do some of the book work. Then we have a new great granddaughter. That's our seventh generation that was born in December, and another one due next week.
Oh, great.
Another great granddaughter due next week. So that's, another in the seventh generation. So hopefully they'll show some interest too.
Yeah, and that's got to feel good to know that it's going to continue through the family.
It does, yeah. And my oldest daughter, Billy, she's an attorney, but she's been very involved with the sheep ranch. She is, I mean, every day. She's up in Victor and Teton County right now. But yeah, she helps whenever we need her. My other daughter's in Utah. But yeah, when she comes home, we'll put her in a pickup and have her help feed or whatever. But yeah, the kids all grew up knowing how to work.
Yeah, that's great. That isn't the case for a lot of ranchers. You get to a certain generation and the family has no interest in continuing on, and so they're forced to sell the land. Agriculture today seems to be having a resurgence in the culture a little bit.
Yeah.
Why is there this renewed interest, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I used to wonder why people didn't care where their food came from. Because we were bringing in a lot of imported food. And I remember asking, I was at a meeting in Maryland, and I asked someone, well, don't you care where your food comes from? And they said, no. People care now. They want to know. You look at the farmers markets and they want to buy local. They want to know more about their food supply. They want to know that they have a secure food supply. And I think they like that, people are still making a living from the land. They kind of tie into that. And when I have guests come to do hunts, they're amazed. They're amazed at what we do every day. So I have a group of friends that from the Republican National Committee from the years I served there, and we go on little retreats. There's only about 8 of us that have stayed close through the years. They cannot relate to my lifestyle in any way at all. But they're fascinated by it. And so they're coming out our retreats in Idaho in June this year because they want to see elk, they want to see bison, they want to see horses and sheep and see the land. And you forget that, we're such a small part of the population that my days are not like most people's days. And I think they are interested in that. And it makes, of course, it might remind them of maybe their childhood or something, but people are starting to care about it. And I think they appreciate production agriculture, appreciate where the food comes from. I mean, it takes a lot of people and a lot of hands along the way to produce it.
Well, I almost think there's a hunger for it because, technology increases and people are so focused on their screens.
Yeah.
Now we have AI, which has so many advantages, but there's so many problems that come along with that. And when you're on a ranch or on a farm, you're connected, you're outside, you're doing something tangible that's real. And I think there's just such a hunger for that,
There is. Yeah, there really is. Yeah, I think it's kind of a flashback to what it used to be like for some. And yeah, but my grandsons are still on their phone when they're out with the sheep. And so are the herdos. But I'll look over and they'll be on their phone. The advantages to the technology is helpful in agriculture as well. So, we all benefit from now.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Pros and cons.
Yeah.
On the political aspect, any of your kids or grandkids have an interest in politics? Has that been a topic of discussion at all?
Well, I think they're committed to service. I've been a precinct committee person for 26 years. This will be the first time that I'm not. Because when I moved up to Fremont County, I stepped away from that. But my son is a precinct committeeman. He's on planning and zoning. My daughter Billy is heavily involved in Teton County planning and works with the commissioners. And you know, at one time I thought maybe she would be interested in running for office because she worked for Governor Batt and she was an intern for Senator Crapo. But I don't know if she will or not. No, but my granddaughter, on the other hand, shows a real interest, I think, in the future. But she's the one that just had the new baby. But we'll
Right.
see. But I've taken her to so many political meetings through the years that she's quite a trooper. But she enjoys it. So yeah, she might be the protege there.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, this has been a delight to talk to you. I've sure enjoyed getting to know you and your husband. Um, Anything else you want to add about this induction into the Eastern Idaho Ag Hall of Fame?
It's just such an honor. It really is to be recognized, in a community and an area of Idaho that we love. And, especially the sheep industry is a small, small family. We know everyone, usually, even throughout the U.S. Agriculture is a little bigger, but it's still small. And to be part of that family, it's really meaningful. So yeah, we're very honored for that recognition and really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Cindy for her time. We would have loved to have Jeff on the show, but he declined. They are in the middle of lambing season, and so they're very busy at this time of year. I called him, and he kind of, passed the buck to his wife. And even though Cindy is also very busy, she agreed to come on. So we're very grateful that she made time for us. The Siddaways, along with the other inductees, will be honored during a banquet ceremony at the Shoshone-Bannock Event Center on March 20th. There will be a reception that starts at 5:30, and the banquet and ceremony will begin at 6:30. The public is welcome to attend. You do need tickets to attend, though. We will include a link to that below this video at eastidahonews.com. We'll also put it in the show notes for those of you listening in audio format. The other inductees include Rick Keller of Chubbuck. He's represented Idaho agriculture for more than 40 years with the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation. Sean Walters of Newdale is another inductee, along with Dennis Morgan Lake of Blackfoot and David Crapo of St. Anthony. So all of these people will be recognized during that banquet ceremony on March 20th. If you liked this episode and would like to see more, be sure and send me a tip for other agriculture-related guests and topics. The email is rett@eastidahonews.com. And then don't forget, we're available in video and audio format. You can find us in video format on the East Idaho News YouTube channel and in audio format wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star review. For It's Worth Mentioning, I'm your host, Rett Nelson. We'll see you next time.